Have you ever stared at your ceiling at night, asking yourself, what if I'm never enough? What if every dream I chase falls apart before it even begins? Let me introduce you to someone whose story just might awaken a fighter inside you. A girl named Maya. Her greatest talent was not brilliance, but relentless perseverance. Stay until the end, because Maya's journey carries a question that could change the meaning of every failure in your own life. Maya grew up in a small town where dreams only grew as big as the fences that surrounded every home. Her family was loving, but practical. Her father fixed motorbikes, and her mother taught math at the local school. Money was tight. Ambition was measured carefully, poured only into things that made sense, like steady jobs and safe careers. But Maya's mind was never careful or steady. Her notebook margins were filled with sketches of flying machines, solar-powered gadgets, and magical contraptions that promised to change the world. Other children played hopscotch. Maya built kites from plastic bags and designed water filters from soda bottles. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she just couldn't help but dream. Sometimes, the neighbors whispered about that strange girl always tinkering with junk. Even her parents would sigh, brushing sawdust from her clothes and murmuring, "Dreams are nice, Maya, but what if you fail?" Maya never answered. Maybe because, even as a child, she secretly wondered the same. The day Maya turned 20, she took the riskiest leap anyone in her family had taken. She left for the big city. No job offer, no college scholarship, just her battered notebooks, a worn backpack, and the words from her grandmother. If you want to see new stars, you must leave your own backyard. City life was overwhelming. The buildings towered over her as if to say, "You are a small fish here." Rent drained her savings. She took a job mopping floors at a tech incubator. Hard work for not much pay, but it brought her closer to the world of invention. After work, Maya huddled in a tiny rented room, sketching blueprints with trembling hands, building prototypes from discarded electronics, chasing the stubborn light of possibility. But city dreams can be cruel. Her first big idea, a solar lantern for villages, refused to hold a charge. Her second, a self-watering plant pot, kept flooding her one houseplant. Her third, a smart umbrella, snapped in the wind outside her window. Each failure felt like a public reminder. Maya, you are just a dreamer from nowhere. Most people at the incubator didn't notice Maya. Some were polite but distant. Others laughed as she fumbled with her odd machines. She cleans better than she invents. A few joked behind her back. Nights grew longer. Money ran low. Maya patched holes in her socks and ate cheap noodles, convincing herself that real inventors struggle. But some nights, her courage wilted. She called home less often, afraid her parents would hear defeat in her voice. Once, after her third or fourth failed prototype, she almost gave up. She stared at her hands, calloused from work, shaking from exhaustion, and for the first time wondered if her family and neighbors had been right all along. Not everyone is destined for greatness, she whispered into the emptiness. Then came the night that changed everything. Maya had fallen asleep at her desk, red-eyed and frustrated. In a half-dream, she saw her childhood self, bright-eyed and unafraid, standing in sunlight with a paper airplane in hand. The young Maya asked, "What happened to us? When did we start believing we weren't allowed to fail?" She awoke with a jolt, tears streaming silently. On her wall, a note from her late grandmother fluttered in the breeze from a cracked window. A river carves a canyon not because it is strong, but because it is relentless. Maya sat up, breathing deeply. Those words pulsed in her mind, not because I am strong, but because I am relentless. She took out a marker, wrote those exact words across the biggest page in her notebook, and taped it above her little desk. If you're listening now, maybe you know what it's like to stare into failure and find nothing comforting there. But sometimes, the smallest voice inside can ignite the greatest turning point. The very next morning, Maya chose to treat every failure not as a sign of her limits, but as a lesson. She borrowed books from the corner library, biographies, engineering manuals, even manuals on marketing. She stopped working alone, shyly joining local inventor clubs and open mic hackathons. The first time she spoke about her flooding plant pot in front of real technologists, her voice wavered. Halfway through, someone interrupted. "What's your next step?" She confessed, "I actually think my design is wrong. If water flows in from the bottom slowly, the roots can absorb it at their own pace." Instead of laughter, the audience leaned in. A retired engineer offered her some advice. Another baker in the crowd suggested a shop where she could find better soil sensors. From that day on, Maya documented every single obstacle as a stepping stone. She stopped seeing failure as the enemy. It became her teacher. The months blurred. Maya worked days at the incubator, sweeping up after others. Nights were filled with soldering, coding, testing, and failing, again and again. But then, tiny victories appeared. Her solar lantern managed to light one dim corner of her room for 5 hours straight. A plant survived an entire week thanks to the new, improved pot. She won a runner-up prize in a local competition, just enough to buy better materials. Maya began to walk taller at work. Some people started to say, "Have you seen what she's making lately?" But progress is never a straight line. Early one spring morning, as Maya prepared to test her newest prototype, an electrical short set off a smoky burst. Her neighbors complained. The landlord, already annoyed by her strange experiments, evicted her with 1 week's notice. She was devastated. Her workshop, her safe space, was gone. She wandered the streets for hours, her few possessions in a bag, her dreams in shreds. Sitting on a bus bench at midnight, it started to rain. She thought, this must be the end. Even relentless rivers hit walls. But as thunder cracked above, she remembered stories of every great inventor she had ever read. None had succeeded without setbacks far worse. She grit her teeth, picked up her bag, and made a promise to herself. For one more day, I will not quit. Call it luck, fate, or stubborn energy, but that one more day changed everything. A woman on the bus, noticing Maya's tear-streaked face and battered gadgets, struck up a conversation. She ran a community creative lab and, when she heard Maya's story, invited her to use the lab space for free until she found her feet. Grateful but cautious, Maya moved her work there. With access to better tools, mentors, and a supportive circle, her confidence and inventions flourished. The first time her perfected self-watering plant pot worked on live TV during a local science fair. Maya's face glowed as brightly as her plants. A local article about her invention spread across social media. Then came an email. An eco-tech startup wanted her patent. Maya, after a sleepless night weighing every risk, signed the deal. Suddenly, she was earning not much, but enough to stop cleaning floors and to dream full-time. Her family called, overjoyed, apologetic for doubting her. Maya didn't bask in glory. She remembered the sofa nights, the failures, the hundreds of sorry, not interested emails from investors. She began to speak at schools, telling young dreamers, "Your setbacks are not tombstones. They are stepping stones." Success brought new challenges, bigger risks, more pressure. Yet every time Maya stumbled, she turned to her grandmother's wisdom. "Not because I am strong, but because I am relentless." She became a mentor for others in her lab, encouraging those who were where she once had been. Maya's inventions began to appear in stores and homes far beyond her little town. She wasn't rich or famous, but she was happy, fulfilled. One day, she returned to her old hometown for a speaking event. Among the crowd were her doubters, her family, her childhood self, and the memories of teachers. And as she looked out from the stage, she said, "I failed more times than I can count. But the only true failure is giving up on yourself." The world doesn't need you to be fearless. It simply needs you to keep showing up. Maya's story isn't about prodigious talent, overnight luck, or even extraordinary courage. It's about rising every time you fall, It's about understanding that every no is just a stepping stone toward your yes. It's about carving your path, not because you are the strongest, but because you never stop moving forward. Are you facing your own mountain of setbacks and doubts? Maya's journey asks you, what small step can you take today, however humble, so that someday you will look back and whisper, I was relentless. So, as you close this chapter, ask yourself, will you let your failures bury your dreams, or will you use them as the fuel to keep going? You are not your last broken attempt. You are the river that carves canyons, not with a single blow, but with relentless hope. The world may laugh. You may even doubt yourself. But remember Maya, the girl with a notebook full of failures who kept showing up. If you refuse to give up, no one, not even your old fears, can count you out. What will you choose?